My husband gave me the trip of my dreams to Paris, France, but as soon as we landed at Charles de Gaulle Airport, he took my passport and all my money, abandoning me alone in a foreign country so he could steal my entire fortune and marry his mistress. He thought I'd become a beggar. He was dead wrong. Catherine's life was the epitome of serenity and stability. As the heiress to a wealthy family, she upheld values of grace and modesty, spending her days in a luxurious townhouse that stood on the most exclusive block of the Upper East Side in New York City. That home was not just a residence but a cherished legacy from her late father. Her entire fortune, from her stock portfolio to her deposits of hundreds of millions of dollars, was purely family inheritance. Catherine didn't flaunt her wealth. On the contrary, she was known for her generosity and kind heart. However, this kind heart often bordered on naive. She saw the world through a positive lens, believing all people were inherently good, and at the center of her world was a man she loved more than anything, her husband, Michael. To anyone's eyes, Michael seemed like the perfect man, handsome, charismatic, and extremely attentive. Every morning, Michael made sure Catherine started her day with a smile, preparing her hot tea, showering her with compliments, and listening with interest to all her stories. To Catherine, Michael was the most beautiful blessing. She felt like the luckiest woman in the world, deeply loved by the man she believed was her protector. Catherine entrusted a large part of her financial and administrative affairs to him, fully confident that her husband would manage everything perfectly. She had no idea that behind that warm smile and those tender hugs, Michael harbored a very dark and calculating hidden intention. One sunny afternoon, as Catherine was finishing a quiet meditation in her home's private library, Michael arrived earlier than usual. His face radiated an unusual happiness. He hugged her from behind, a gesture that always made her feel safe. "Darling, I have the biggest surprise of your life," Michael whispered. Catherine turned around, her elegant dress shifted slightly. Her calm eyes looked at him with curiosity. Michael pulled out an envelope containing 2 airline tickets and hotel reservation documents. "We're going to Paris," Michael exclaimed. Catherine's eyes widened with incredible excitement. Paris, the city she had always dreamed of since she was a little girl. Paris, France. "Really, honey?" Catherine asked, her voice trembling, holding back tears of joy. "Of course, my love. I've arranged everything. Visas, a 5-star hotel, private tours. You deserve all of this. You've been such a wonderful wife to me. Consider it a small gift for all your patience and love." Catherine couldn't say another word. She hugged her husband tightly. Her tears dampened Michael's shirt. She didn't realize that all the expenses for this lavish trip had been paid for with her own unlimited black card, which she had fully entrusted to Michael. For Catherine, this was proof of her husband's infinite love. The preparations for the trip were quick and feverish. Catherine was busy choosing which clothes to pack. She imagined herself strolling through the historic streets of Paris. While Catherine was lost in her excitement, Michael was immersed in the final phase of his plan. 3 days before their departure, Michael approached Catherine, who was organizing clothes in her room. He carried a thick stack of documents. His face wore a slightly preoccupied expression, as if he were thinking about many important matters. "Honey, there are a few last administrative documents I need you to sign before we go," he said in a serious voice. Catherine, completely thrilled, nodded slightly. "What documents are they, my love?" "They're just standard papers," Michael replied with conviction. "This is our travel insurance, and these are some health forms for the embassy. And this is just a temporary power of attorney." Catherine stopped folding her clothes. "What power of attorney?" Michael reassured her with that smile that always melted Catherine's heart. "It's just a formality, honey, so that while we're both abroad, I can continue to manage our banking and assets in New York in case of an emergency. For example, an important bill payment could be blocked, or a sudden business issue might come up. Without this power, the bank might temporarily freeze the accounts while we're away. It's only valid while we're traveling. The lawyer said it's standard procedure for those traveling for a long period." Catherine thought of Mr. Sullivan, her late father's trusted attorney. Mr. Sullivan had always warned her never to sign any document without reading it carefully. But this time, the one asking was Michael, her husband, whom she trusted with her entire soul and body. Doubting him felt like a sin. "All right, show me where I need to sign." Michael quickly flipped through the pages of the documents, pointing directly to the dotted line at the bottom of each one. Here, here, and here. Catherine took the pen and, without reading a single word of the paper's contents, she signed. She didn't know she had just signed an absolute and forged power of attorney that granted Michael full authority to sell, transfer, and liquidate all assets in her name, including this luxurious townhouse. The day of departure arrived. They flew in business class, enjoying all the luxuries. Catherine felt like a queen. Throughout the entire journey, she couldn't stop thanking him. She looked out the window at the white clouds spread beneath the blue sky. Her heart was light and happy. Michael took her hand and squeezed it tightly. Catherine turned to her husband and smiled. "Thank you, darling. This is truly a dream," Catherine said sincerely. Michael smiled back, but his eyes held a different look. "This will be the best trip of our lives, honey. I promise," he said. Catherine rested her head on Michael's shoulder and closed her eyes in peace. If she had looked closer, she would have noticed the look in Michael's eyes at that moment. A look that was empty, cold, and calculating. The look of a predator just before pouncing on its prey. The plane landed smoothly at Paris Charles de Gaulle International Airport, CDG. As the plane doors opened, a slightly humid but warm French air greeted them, and Catherine felt a huge sense of anticipation. Her heart pounded. She was finally stepping on the land of her dreams. She held onto Michael's arm tightly as they walked through the long airport corridors. The sound of announcements in French that she didn't understand, people coming and going, speaking various languages, the unfamiliar signs. It all made her a little dizzy, but it also fascinated her. She felt small, but safe, because Michael was by her side. She depended completely on her husband, who seemed calm and competent in the situation. They passed through immigration control without any issues. Michael, who held both of their passports, chatted with the officer in fluent English. Catherine just smiled politely beside him. Then they headed to the baggage claim area. 2 large black suitcases and an additional bag with Catherine's personal items appeared on the conveyor belt. Michael quickly collected everything and loaded it onto a luggage cart. "Okay, that's everything. Now, let's find a taxi to the hotel," Michael said. Catherine nodded. Her eyes were still busy exploring the bustling arrivals hall. She was so naive, so absorbed in her own happiness, that she didn't notice the danger signs beginning to appear. Michael pushed the cart toward the exit, but just before reaching the automatic doors, he suddenly stopped in a rather crowded area. He turned to Catherine with an expression of having remembered something. "Oh, honey, I forgot. We need a local SIM card to have internet and stay in touch. And I've been wanting to use the restroom this entire flight," he said. Catherine looked at him. "Oh, of course, darling. Do you want me to come with you?" Michael quickly shook his head. "No. You wait here with these bags. I'll be quick and come right back. The restroom and the SIM card store seem to be on the other side of the hall, where all those people are," he said. Catherine nodded obediently. "All right, my love. I'll wait here." As Michael was about to turn, he stopped again. "Oh, honey," he said with a voice full of concern. "They say there are a lot of pickpockets here. Airport halls like this are their main target, and you're going to be here alone watching 3 large suitcases. Wouldn't it be safer if you put your small crossbody bag in my backpack? You have your wallet, phone, and passport in there, right? It would be a real disaster if you lost it." What Michael said seemed very reasonable to Catherine. She felt a bit overwhelmed having to watch 3 large suitcases alone in a crowded place. Without much thought, Catherine took off her small crossbody bag, the bag that contained her entire identity and lifelines, her passport, her wallet with credit cards and some cash, and her cell phone. She handed it to Michael. Michael quickly put it inside the large backpack he was wearing. "Good, this is safer. I'll be back in a moment." "Don't move from here," Michael said. He gave her a quick kiss on the forehead, turned, and walked away at a brisk pace, disappearing into the crowd. 5 minutes passed. Catherine waited patiently. She watched the new arrivals, imagining the stories behind each face. 10 minutes. She started to feel a bit restless. She adjusted her clothes, which she felt had become a little crooked. 15 minutes. A SIM card in the restroom couldn't take that long. Catherine directed her gaze toward the direction Michael had pointed to earlier. There was no sign of her husband returning. 20 minutes. Her heart began to beat a little faster. She tried to calm herself by thinking the line must be very long. 30 minutes. Catherine's feet started to hurt. Her excitement turned into anxiety. She now felt like a strange exhibit, standing stiffly next to the pile of suitcases. 45 minutes. The anxiety turned into a seed of panic. Where was Michael? Had he gotten lost? Had something happened to him? Catherine wanted to move and look for him, but she couldn't leave 3 large suitcases alone. She had no phone to contact him. She had nothing. An hour. Catherine was on the verge of tears. The people around her came and went constantly, but she remained there, motionless like a statue. She realized a terrible truth. She was alone, completely alone in a foreign country, without a single cent, without identification documents, and without a phone. And most frighteningly, she didn't speak a word of French. She didn't even know the name of the hotel they were staying at, because Michael had taken care of everything. 2 airport security officers, who had been watching her from a distance, finally approached her. They saw a well-dressed woman standing next to a pile of suitcases, looking lost for far too long. "Madame," one of the guards said. Catherine flinched. She looked at them with eyes already filled with tears. "Do you speak English?" the guard asked with a heavy accent. Catherine nodded quickly. "My husband went to the restroom an hour ago, and he hasn't come back yet," Catherine explained in a trembling voice. The 2 guards looked at each other. "Can we see your identification, madam?" "Your passport?" the second guard asked. At that exact moment, the horrible reality struck Catherine. I don't have it," Catherine whispered. "My husband has my passport." The faces of the 2 guards instantly turned serious. A woman without papers in an international airport was a big problem. "You will have to come with us to the security office," the first guard said firmly. Catherine's hands turned ice cold. She burst into tears. An hour. Catherine was on the verge of tears. The people around her came and went constantly, but she remained there, motionless like a statue. She realized a terrible truth. She was alone, completely alone in a foreign country, without a single cent, without identification documents, and without a phone. And most frighteningly, she didn't speak a word of French. She didn't even know the name of the hotel they were staying at, because Michael had taken care of everything. Just then, in the midst of her desperation, Catherine's eyes caught a distant scene. Across the hall, near the domestic departures area, she saw a silhouette she knew all too well. Michael, her husband, was there. He wasn't lost. He hadn't had an accident. Catherine's heart seemed to stop. Michael wasn't alone. He was tenderly embracing another woman. The woman was beautiful and dressed very elegantly. Catherine recognized her. Jessica, the woman Michael had introduced as a distant cousin or a colleague at a company event. The 2 looked incredibly happy. They were laughing together as they each pulled a small carry-on suitcase. They didn't look at all like people who were separated or distressed. They looked like a couple about to start a romantic vacation. Catherine saw them walk calmly toward a boarding gate with a sign that read, "Nice." Michael never once looked back. He didn't turn to look at his wife, who was now being led away by guards, abandoned thousands of miles from home, with nothing but the clothes on her back. Catherine's world collapsed in an instant. The image of Michael hugging Jessica and walking away, smiling and carefree, toward the flight to Nice was like a knife that tore through the last vestiges of trust and love left in her heart. This hadn't been an accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a perfectly executed plan. Her husband, the man she believed to be her protector, was the architect of her ruin. A bone-chilling cold, far colder than the marble floor, enveloped her. The security officers, now holding her arm, felt like her only anchor to reality. Her tears dried up, replaced by a terrifyingly empty stare. She didn't resist as they led her to a small room inside the airport's security office. The room was sterile and smelled of disinfectant. A senior officer sat across from her, looking at her with a mix of suspicion and compassion. "Madam," he said in broken English, "you have no passport, No identification. This is a very serious problem in France. We cannot simply let you go. Catherine swallowed hard. Her throat was as dry as a desert. I am an American citizen. My husband took my passport. He abandoned me. The officer sighed. They had heard stories like this often. Couples disputes, partners fighting, and one of them running off with the documents. We will try to contact your husband. You said he was going to Nice, he asked. Catherine shook her head. He won't answer. He did this on purpose. The horrible reality hit her again. Michael had planned everything. He wanted her to be detained, deported, or worse, to disappear without a trace in a foreign country. For hours, Catherine sat in that room. Hunger, exhaustion, and jet lag mixed with a dense despair. Every minute felt like an hour. She was alone. She didn't know anyone on the entire continent. She had no one to call. All her friends' contacts were on her phone, which Michael now had. She tried to remember her mother's phone number. She couldn't. Her best friend's number? Also blank. Her mind was a void. And then, like a ray of light in the deepest darkness, a memory emerged. An office phone number, a number that hadn't changed since she was a child, the number her late father always remembered, the number of Mr. Sullivan's law firm. "Please," Catherine said to the officer. Her voice was a hoarse whisper. "I need to make one call to the United States. To my lawyer. It's the only number I know by heart." The officer looked at her for a moment, perhaps seeing the sheer desperation in Catherine's eyes. Finally, he nodded. "You have one call to your country's embassy. Ask them to connect you. That is the procedure." The officer guided her to a phone at another desk. Catherine contacted the operator at the U.S. Embassy in Paris. Her voice trembled violently. She gave the number she remembered. Her heart pounded as she heard the ringing tones in New York. It was past midnight there. Mr. Sullivan, a middle-aged man dedicated to his work, happened to be in his office finishing some important documents. He frowned when he saw an international call from France at that hour. "Sullivan Law," he answered in his firm voice. "Mr. Sullivan," Catherine whispered. She broke down crying instantly. All the strength she had tried to build crumbled. "Mr. Sullivan, it's Catherine. Please help me." Mr. Sullivan sat up straight immediately. He recognized the voice of his most important client's daughter. "Miss Catherine, what is it? Where are you? Aren't you supposed to be on vacation?" Between sobs, Catherine told him everything in a rush. Abandoned at the Paris airport, no passport, no money, no phone, and the sight of Michael leaving for Nice with Jessica. Mr. Sullivan listened, his brow furrowed. His instincts, honed over decades of handling complex cases, kicked in immediately. This wasn't a domestic dispute. This was a premeditated criminal act. "Miss Catherine, listen to me carefully," Mr. Sullivan said in a calm but authoritative voice. "Do not panic. Now that you've contacted the embassy, you are safe. I will handle this. First, I will immediately contact a colleague of mine in Paris to pick you up and help you get an emergency travel document. But please, focus on your safety first," Mr. Sullivan interrupted. "There is one thing I need to confirm right now. Miss Catherine, did you sign any documents for Michael before you left?" Catherine paused. Her heart pounded. Yes, Mr. Sullivan." He said it was travel insurance and a temporary power of attorney to handle bank matters while we were away. Mr. Sullivan closed his eyes for a moment. It was the answer he had expected and feared. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "Miss Catherine, stay at the embassy building until my man, Mr. Dubois, comes to get you. Do not move from there. I will call you back." Mr. Sullivan hung up immediately. He didn't waste a second. His first call was to Mr. Dubois, a French lawyer who owed him a favor. "Antoine, I need your help. My client is stranded at CDG. Protect her. Get her an express emergency travel document. Cost is not an issue." His second call was to his personal assistant in New York, waking him in the middle of the night. "David, get to my office right now. Open my personal safe. Find all the copies of assets under Miss Liebervox. Catherine's name and call our contact at JP Morgan Chase." I suspect there's about to be a massive attempt to drain her accounts." While Catherine was being moved to a more comfortable waiting room by the embassy staff on the other side of the world, Mr. Sullivan and his team moved with lightning speed. Just as he expected, within an hour they discovered what they feared. Michael, using the power of attorney Catherine had just signed, had initiated the process to sell Catherine's luxurious townhouse to a buyer he had already lined up. He was also in the process of transferring large sums of money from Catherine's savings accounts to a new overseas account in his name. He hadn't just abandoned her, he was ripping out her entire fortune by the roots. "Block it," Mr. Sullivan ordered his team. "Contact every bank. Declare the power of attorney null and void due to fraudulent inducement. File a report with the FBI's white-collar crime division. Freeze every asset in both Catherine's and Michael's names immediately." Mr. Sullivan called Catherine back in Paris, who was now with the sharp Mr. Dubois. "Miss Catherine, you need to be strong," Mr. Sullivan said in a serious voice. "My suspicions were correct. Michael wasn't just trying to get rid of you, he was trying to steal your father's entire legacy. He wanted you to return to the United States as a beggar." Catherine felt a wave of nausea. The betrayal was so deep, so total. Michael didn't just hate her, he wanted to destroy her. "But his plan has failed," Mr. Sullivan continued. "We've managed to freeze everything. Your house is safe, your money is safe. He can't touch it anymore." Catherine sank weakly into the chair. She was saved but shattered. "Now, Mr. Sullivan said again, "Mr. Dubois will handle your papers. It will take a day or two, then you will come back immediately." While Catherine was being moved to a more comfortable waiting room by the embassy staff on the other side of the world, Mr. Sullivan and his team moved with lightning speed. Just as he expected, within an hour they discovered what they feared. Michael, using the power of attorney Catherine had just signed, had initiated the process to sell Catherine's luxurious townhouse to a buyer he had already lined up. Catherine looked at Mr. Dubois, a middle-aged Frenchman who looked at her with compassionate eyes. And then she looked at her own hands, which were still trembling. Something inside her broke and then hardened. The naive woman who had cried with joy upon receiving the tickets to Paris had died in that airport terminal. The woman sitting here now was someone else, someone who had seen hell. "Understood, Mr. Sullivan," Catherine replied. Her voice was different. It no longer trembled from crying but was cold, with an icy fury. "Get me home. I'll be waiting for him in my house." In contrast to the hell Catherine was living in Paris, Michael and Jessica were in their own artificial paradise. After landing in Nice, they immediately took a private car service Michael had booked. They laughed and embraced as they drove along the beautiful Côte d'Azur with the sparkling Mediterranean Sea beside them. Jessica, a materialistic and beautiful woman, rested her head on Michael's shoulder. Her eyes sparkled with the luxury surrounding her. "This is incredible, honey. I can't believe we pulled it off," she sighed. Michael smiled with satisfaction. He felt like a god. His plan had gone off without a hitch. "Of course we pulled it off, babe. What did I tell you? Brains beat everything." And Catherine is a fool, too foolish for her own good. They arrived at a lavish 5-star hotel with a direct view of the sea. Their suite was the most expensive one. As soon as they entered, Jessica ran to the balcony and opened her arms as if to embrace the entire city. Michael opened a bottle of expensive champagne from the minibar. The cost, of course, would be charged to Catherine's unlimited black card. He poured 2 glasses and brought them to Jessica on the balcony. "To us," Michael toasted. Their glasses clinked. "To us," Jessica replied, "and to the end of that boring woman. I'm so glad we're rid of her forever. What do you think will happen to her now?" Jessica asked, sipping her champagne. "She's alone in Paris with nothing. What do you think she'll do?" Michael laughed dismissively. "What can she do? At most cry at the airport, then the officials will detain her. She doesn't speak French, she doesn't know anyone. They'll deport her as an illegal immigrant, or she'll end up in some social assistance center. It will take weeks, if not months." Jessica smiled. And in the meantime, Michael interrupted with a cunning smile, "I'll play the part of the heartbroken husband. I'll call the embassy in Paris to falsely report her missing. I'll cry." Meanwhile, back in New York, the power of attorney she signed will be doing its work. My lawyer is in the process of selling her house. All her money is being transferred to a secret account I've set up in Switzerland. By the time we get back in 3 days, it will all be over. We'll be multi-millionaires. Jessica hugged him tightly. You're a genius, my love. I love you. I love you too, Michael replied, but his eyes were on the Nice skyline. His mind was on the piles of money. Love had nothing to do with it. This was business. Jessica was just an extra, a pretty trophy to display in place of the old-fashioned Catherine. They spent the next 2 days in absolute luxury. They went on a shopping spree in designer boutiques. Jessica bought handbags, shoes, and jewelry so expensive they could have bought a car. Michael bought several luxury watches. Every time Catherine's credit card was swiped and the transaction was approved, Michael's sense of triumph grew. He felt invincible. He was the master of the universe. On the second night, they dined at the most exclusive restaurant in Nice, with a spectacular view of the moonlit sea. It was the culmination of their celebration. While waiting for dessert, Michael took out his laptop. "I have one more gift for you, babe," he told Jessica. Her eyes sparkled. "I'm going to finalize the purchase of a luxury apartment in Manhattan in your name. A little gift to celebrate our new beginning." Michael confidently logged into his banking portal. He had prepared a large transfer from Catherine's main account to pay for the purchase in full. He entered all the details, smiled at Jessica, and then hit the button to confirm the transfer. 1 second, 2 seconds. The processing wheel spun on the screen. And then, a red box appeared. Transaction declined, insufficient funds, or account frozen. The smile froze on Michael's face. "What is this?" he muttered. "It's impossible for there to be no balance. There are hundreds of millions in there." He tried again, but it was rejected. His hands began to tremble slightly. He tried to open Catherine's other savings accounts. Access denied. "This account has been frozen at the request of the owner." A cold sweat started to run down Michael's temples. He felt his heart drop into his stomach. "Michael, what's wrong?" Jessica asked, seeing the drastic change in her lover's face. Michael didn't answer. He frantically rummaged through his wallet and pulled out Catherine's black card. He called the waiter over. "Could you bring me the check now? Quickly." The waiter arrived with the machine. Michael handed him the card. The waiter swiped it. Card declined. "I'm sorry, sir. The card has been declined." "Do you have another?" Michael's face turned white as a sheet. Jessica covered her mouth in disbelief. "Damn it." Michael slammed the table, causing all the other diners to turn. She did it. Somehow, that stupid woman did it. Jessica was terrified too. Did what? What are you talking about? She must have contacted someone. That old lawyer, Sullivan. He must have frozen everything. Michael shouted. He no longer cared about the stairs. The romantic vacation had turned into a nightmare in an instant. They had no money left. All the cards in Catherine's name were blocked. They were stranded in a luxury restaurant in Nice. "We have to go back," Michael said, his voice trembling with rage and panic. "We have to get back to New York now." After Michael was forced to use the last of his emergency cash to pay the bill, they rushed out of the restaurant, returned to the hotel, and haphazardly packed up their luxury purchases. The laughter and intimacy were gone, replaced by mutual accusations. "This is all your fault. Why didn't you take her phone earlier?" Jessica screamed. "Shut up," Michael retorted. "Think about how we're going to get back." They were barely able to buy the cheapest tickets on the first flight to New York with the money they had left. On the plane, Michael sat in silence, staring out the window. He was no longer an invincible king. He was a criminal whose plan had completely failed. But this isn't over. Rage now replaced his panic. "Just you wait, Catherine," he whispered to the darkness behind the window. "You think you can beat me? You think you can take that house back? When I get to New York, you'll regret you were ever born." He had no idea that the house he was heading to was preparing a welcome he did not expect, nor that Catherine, with an emergency travel document in hand, was already on another plane, flying ahead of him. Mr. Dubois was a true professional. The tall, neatly dressed Frenchman worked quietly and efficiently. He didn't ask many questions. It was clear that Mr. Sullivan had already explained the big picture to him. In less than 36 hours, which felt like record time, Mr. Dubois managed to process all the emergency documentation. He took Catherine to the embassy for the interview and photos, and the next day, the pale green emergency travel document was in Catherine's hands. It felt heavy, not because of the weight of the paper, but because of the weight of the reality it symbolized. It was her ticket back home and, at the same time, a monument to her husband's betrayal. While they waited, Mr. Dubois ensured Catherine was safely housed in a residence affiliated with the embassy. She wasn't alone, but she felt more alone than ever in her life. In that simple, clean residence room, Catherine finally had time to think. During those 36 hours, she didn't cry again. The shock and despair she had felt at the airport had crystallized into something else. Something cold, hard, and heavy had settled in her chest. It was rage, pure, ice-cold rage. She replayed all her memories with Michael in her mind. His smiles, his kindness, his words of love. Now she saw it all with new eyes. It had all been fake. Every hug, a lie. Every compliment, a manipulation. The man she had married had never existed. There was only a ruthless predator who had set his sights on her, perhaps from the moment they met. She remembered how a business partner of her late father had introduced her to Michael. Michael had been so charming, so polite. She remembered how quickly he had won over her mother, how he had captivated everyone. She remembered how Michael would look at her with adoration, making her feel like the only woman in the world. It had all been a performance, a long play with a single purpose, her inheritance. She remembered Jessica, introduced as a distant cousin at a dinner. Catherine remembered feeling a pang of jealousy then, seeing how Michael laughed with her. But Michael had reassured her. "She's like a little sister to me, honey. Don't be silly. A sister." That lie now felt so dirty in her mind. The betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about her very being. Michael had taken her innocence and her trust and trampled them under his boots. He hadn't just tried to rob her. He had wanted to eliminate her. Leaving her as a destitute person in a foreign country without an identity was a slow death sentence. He wanted her to disappear so he could celebrate freely on the ruins of her life. Catherine's jaw tensed at that thought. No, she would not let that happen. She would not give Michael the satisfaction of seeing her broken. The naive woman who had flown to Paris with dreams in her eyes had died at Charles de Gaulle. The one returning was a woman coming to reclaim what was hers. Mr. Torres, a man with glasses who looked like an academic, pointed to his laptop screen displaying complex diagrams. "We've been working since Mr. Sullivan contacted us yesterday." "You were lucky, ma'am. We managed to stop everything just in time." "What is the extent of the damage?" Catherine asked in a firm voice. "Michael was very cunning," Mr. Torres explained. "The forged power of attorney you signed was done very professionally." Catherine gripped the receiver, not out of fear but anticipation. "And my flight? Yours will have a layover in Dubai," Mr. Sullivan explained. "I've booked this route on purpose. You will land at JFK tomorrow evening. That will give you almost 18 hours of lead time before he arrives. We desperately need that time to prepare his welcome." Catherine's heart pounded. "Understood, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you. You are strong, Miss Catherine." Mr. Sullivan's voice softened for a moment. "Your father would be very proud of you." Those words almost broke her defenses, but Catherine held back. "I am strong, Mr. Sullivan. I'm ready." The flight back was long and hazy. Catherine sat in a coach seat, squeezed between strangers. She couldn't sleep. She stared at the sea of clouds through the window. Her thoughts were sharp as blades. She was no longer a victim. She was a hunter. She thought of her house, the house her father built, the house where she grew up, the house Michael tried to snatch from her. She wasn't going to surrender it. When the plane finally landed at John F. Kennedy International Airport, the smell of New York was different. The humid and familiar night air felt like a slap in the face, but this time it was a slap that woke her up. She was no longer dizzy or fascinated, she was focused. She passed through immigration using her emergency travel document. It was a process that took a little longer, as the agent had to run additional checks, but Mr. Sullivan had already anticipated this. An official note faxed from his law firm to the airport authorities expedited everything. When she emerged into the arrivals hall, she didn't look around. Her eyes went straight to a man in a suit holding a small sign that read, "Client of Mr. Sullivan." The man, Mr. Sullivan's assistant, didn't talk much. He nodded politely, took the small carry-on bag Mr. Dubois had lent her, and guided Catherine to a black sedan waiting in the private pickup area. He was the only person who met her. There were no hugs or tears, just efficient silence. In the car, she just looked out the window. The nighttime streets of Manhattan, which had once seemed comforting, now looked like a battlefield. "Straight to your residence, ma'am?" the driver asked quietly. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment, gathering all her strength. "Yes, please. I'm going home." As the car sped through the night, Catherine knew what she had to do. She wasn't going to rest. The war was about to begin, and she had every intention of winning it. The black sedan passed smoothly through the gate of the exclusive Upper East Side block where Catherine lived. Her heart beat a little faster as she saw her townhouse standing before her. It looked dark and silent, exactly as she had left it 3 days ago. 3 days that felt like 30 years. The driver opened the door for her. "Mr. Sullivan is waiting for you inside, ma'am," he said quietly. Catherine nodded, got out of the car, and took a deep breath. The night air felt heavy. She walked up the stone path leading to the front door. She didn't need a key. The door opened as she approached. Mr. Sullivan stood in the doorway. His face looked tired but determined. Despite being nearly 60, the man still exuded an aura of strong authority. "Welcome back, Miss Catherine," he said formally, but his eyes conveyed genuine relief. "Come in, we don't have much time." Catherine stepped into her own home. It felt strange. Everything was exactly the same: the subtle scent of lilies, the grand painting in the foyer, the cold marble floor. But to Catherine, the house felt alien. It was no longer a safe haven. It was a fortress she had to defend. She followed Mr. Sullivan to the spacious office she normally barely entered. The room had been transformed into a command center. There were 3 other people there whom she didn't know. "Miss Catherine, allow me to introduce you," Mr. Sullivan said. "This is Mr. Torres, the best forensic auditor in the country, and his team. And this is Special Agent Miller from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, and his colleague." Catherine nodded stiffly at them. Agent Miller, a burly man with a penetrating gaze, stepped forward. "Ma'am, I'm very sorry for what you've been through, but I can't help but admire your composure. We're here to make sure justice is served." Mr. Torres, a man with glasses who looked like an academic, pointed to his laptop screen displaying complex diagrams. "We've been working since Mr. Sullivan contacted us yesterday." "You were lucky, ma'am. We managed to stop everything just in time." "What is the extent of the damage?" Catherine asked in a firm voice. "Michael was very cunning," Mr. Torres explained. "The forged power of attorney you signed was done very professionally. He used it to initiate the sale of this house to a shell company created in Jessica's name. He was trying to sell the house to his mistress at a price far below market value to liquidate it quickly. He also created 5 new overseas accounts. Before we managed to freeze everything, he managed to transfer nearly $1 million from your checking account, $1 million for their spree in Nice." Catherine felt nauseous but held it in. "What is our legal position, Mr. Sullivan?" Catherine turned to her lawyer. "Solid as a rock," Mr. Sullivan replied dryly. "We have all the evidence: the forged power of attorney, the digital trail of the transfers to Jessica's account, their flight booking data to Nice, and most importantly, your testimony. This isn't just a civil case, it's a major criminal felony, premeditated fraud, document forgery, money laundering, and what I will argue in court, attempted homicide through abandonment with risk to life." Agent Miller nodded in agreement. "The digital evidence is damning, but what we need now is the final nail in his coffin. We want to arrest him in the act. When he walks into this house, he'll still think his plan has succeeded. He'll be in a panic about the frozen accounts, but he'll still believe he has control of this house. What's the plan?" Catherine asked. "We will be here when he arrives," Agent Miller said. "We've installed several hidden cameras and audio recording devices in the living room and foyer. My team and Mr. Torres will be monitoring from this office. Mr. Sullivan will be with us as well. And where will I be? You are the bait, ma'am, Agent Miller said. We need you to be in the living room. Let him come in. Let him see you. His reaction to seeing you safe and sound is the key piece of evidence. Let him talk whether he threatens, begs, whatever. Let him incriminate himself. As soon as he exposes himself enough or attempts any physical action, we will come out immediately and arrest him. Catherine looked into Agent Miller's eyes. To be the bait. To sit in the same room as the man who tried to destroy her. The man she had blindly loved. He will arrive tomorrow, around 4 p.m., Mr. Sullivan said. His keys still work. We haven't changed the locks on the doors or the gate on purpose. Let him walk in as if it's still his house. He needs to feel comfortable before we take him down. Catherine nodded slowly. All right, I'll do it. That night, Catherine didn't sleep in her master bedroom. The room she had shared with Michael disgusted her. She slept in the guest room on the ground floor. In reality, she didn't sleep. It was more a state of closing her eyes and gathering strength. The next day, throughout the morning and into the afternoon, the house buzzed with quiet activity. Mr. Seemly asleep Pagan. Torres's team ensured all recording devices were working. Agent Miller's team reviewed all entry routes. Catherine herself spent the time in the small study. She didn't pray for a miracle. She prayed for strength, the strength to face the demon she once called husband. At 4:15 p.m., everything was ready. Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Torres, and 2 FBI agents were already hidden in the office. All the doors were closed. The house fell silent again. Catherine went to the bathroom, showered, cleared her mind, and then got dressed. She didn't put on the usual casual clothes she used to wear when Michael came home from work. She chose her best dark blue silk dress. She styled her hair impeccably. She put on a light touch of makeup so she wouldn't look pale. She wanted Michael to see her not as a weeping victim, but as a queen on her throne. She walked to the living room. She turned on a single reading lamp in a corner, leaving the rest of the room in the soft afternoon light. She prepared herself a cup of hot chamomile tea. The steam rose faintly. She sat down in the most expensive armchair, the one directly facing the main entrance. Her hands did not tremble as she held the teacup. She was as calm as ice. She was the rightful owner of this house. She was the woman who had been left for dead in hell but had risen on her own. She waited. At exactly 4:35 p.m., she heard it, the sound of a taxi stopping outside the gate. The sound of the gate opening, hurried and angry footsteps on the stone path, and then the sound of a key being inserted into the front door lock. The key turned. The front door creaked open. The figure of Michael with his carry-on bag appeared in the doorway. His face was gaunt, filled with rage and panic. "Catherine? That's weird. Why is it so dark?" He yelled into the silent house, thinking it was empty. The flight from Nice to New York was the longest hell Michael had ever experienced. He and Jessica were crammed into narrow coach seats. The luxury of the business class they had departed in felt like a mocking memory. They barely spoke. Jessica spent most of the time sobbing quietly, her face pale under large sunglasses that hid her swollen eyes. Michael, on the other hand, sat rigidly. His jaw was clenched, rage and panic boiling inside him. With every passing hour, his mind raced, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. How could Catherine, that meek and submissive woman, move so fast? She must have contacted Mr. Sullivan. That old lawyer must have poisoned Catherine's mind and frozen his assets. When the plane landed at JFK, Michael roughly pulled Jessica from her seat. "Listen," he hissed. "Don't look panicked. Just follow me." They collected their carry-on bags, which now felt much heavier, filled with worthless luxuries. They quickly passed through immigration. Michael ordered a taxi online. The atmosphere in the taxi was extremely tense. Jessica finally spoke. "Michael, what are we going to do now? We're out of money." "The cards." "Shut up," Michael shouted. The taxi driver glanced at them in the rear-view mirror. Michael lowered his voice. "Listen, Jessica, this isn't over. That lawyer may have frozen the accounts, but the house is still in my name. The power of attorney is valid. I'll handle it," he said, that assertion more to reassure himself than Jessica. He knew the law. That power of attorney would be a huge problem if contested. But he still had one card left. He still had the keys to the house. He would go in there, grab the original property deeds he knew Catherine kept in the office safe, and throw out whoever was there. Catherine might have come back, but she was surely crying at her mother's house or at Mr. Sullivan's office. There was no way she'd be in this house. Arriving at the entrance, Michael paid the taxi with the last of his remaining cash. He turned to Jessica. "Wait here, don't get out of the taxi. I'll go in and see the situation. I'll fix it. I might need a bit of force to get Mr. Sullivan's people out. When it's safe, I'll call you." Jessica nodded, terrified. When the plane landed at JFK, Michael roughly pulled Jessica from her seat. "Listen," he hissed. "Don't look panicked, just follow me." They collected their carry-on bags, which now felt much heavier, filled with worthless luxuries. They quickly passed through immigration. Michael ordered a taxi online. The atmosphere in the taxi was extremely tense. Jessica finally spoke. "Michael, what are we going to do now? We're out of money. The cards." "Shut up," Michael shouted. Michael got out, pulling his carry-on. His steps were fast and filled with fury. Adrenaline pumped through his heart. He reached the gate of his magnificent townhouse, pushed it. It wasn't locked. He smirked, cynically. Idiots. They didn't even lock the gate. He walked up the stone path. He reached the grand teak front door. He fumbled in his pockets and pulled out his key. His heart was pounding. This was his make-or-break moment. He inserted the key into the lock, turned it gently. Click. He pushed the door open. Inside, it was completely dark. Only the faint afternoon light streamed through the windows. Silence greeted him. He stepped inside, dragging his suitcase. "Catherine?" he called into the silent house. His voice echoed. No response. "That's weird. Why is it so dark?" he mumbled. He had expected at least a security guard hired by Mr. Sullivan. He walked towards the foyer. His hand fumbled along the wall for the light switch. He found it. His fingers flicked the switch. Click. The crystal chandelier in the living room instantly lit up, flooding the entire room with brilliant light. Michael's heart seemed to stop. He felt as if all the blood had drained from his face. There, sitting in the armchair directly facing him, was Catherine. She wasn't crying. She didn't look scared. She wore an elegant dark blue silk dress. Her hair was immaculate. In her hands, she held a teacup from which a faint steam still rose. She was looking at him with a calm smile, the most terrifying smile Michael had ever seen. The carry-on bag slipped from Michael's hand, crashing with a loud thud onto the marble floor. "No." His voice was a choked whisper. He staggered backward. His eyes were wide with terror. "This is impossible. It's a hallucination. It must be the exhaustion." "It's not impossible," she said more loudly. You. Catherine raised her teacup and took a slow sip, never taking her eyes off her husband's pale face. "You should be in Paris," Michael said, his voice now trembling between rage and fear. "How can you be here?" He pointed a shaky finger at her. "Who are you? You must be a ghost." Catherine let out a small laugh. It was a pleasant sound, but to Michael's ears, it sounded like death knells. "I'm not a ghost, darling," she said softly. "I'm just your wife, whom you abandoned to die in a foreign country." The reality hit Michael like a freight train. She was real. She was here. She was back. His plan had not only failed, it had backfired on him. He was trapped. "Catherine!" he yelled, trying to seize control of the situation with anger. "What is all this? How dare you freeze all my accounts? Who do you think you are? Who do I think I am?" Catherine asked, still coolly. "I am the owner of this house, the owner of all the money you spent on your spree in Nice, and the owner of the money you used to buy all the things in that suitcase." Catherine set the teacup down on the table. She stood up slowly. It was an elegant movement, like a lioness watching her wounded prey. "Oh, you're back?" she said, mimicking the sweet voice she used to use. "Come on in. Don't just stand there in the doorway." She smiled again. "Because I have another wonderful surprise for you." Catherine's words hung in the air. Surprise? Michael's mind was still struggling to process the impossibility of the situation. He was still standing in the foyer, his feet feeling glued to the floor. "What other surprise? You've taken everything. You've ruined my plan." "My plan?" Catherine arched an eyebrow. "The plan to abandon me like trash? The plan to steal everything I have and live happily with that woman?" Now cornered and terrified, Michael lost whatever control he had left. His charismatic mask fell away, revealing his true, hate-filled face. "Yes, my plan," he screamed, his voice echoing through the silent house. "A plan I spent months preparing, and you ruined it. You were supposed to be in Paris. I left you there. I left you at the airport with nothing. You were supposed to be a beggar. You should never have been able to come back." Unwittingly, he had blurted out his full confession. A confession that was loud and clear, recorded by all the hidden microphones that had been installed. Catherine smiled. It was a smile of triumph. "Thank you, Michael. Your confession has been very clear." Michael froze. "Confession? What are you talking about?" "My first gift," Catherine said, her voice now cold and flat again. She tilted her head slightly toward the closed office door. "It's them." At that very moment, the office door swung open. The first figure Michael saw was Mr. Sullivan, standing tall in his impeccable suit. His face showed a cold satisfaction. Behind Mr. Sullivan, Agent Miller emerged, followed by two uniformed FBI agents. Michael's legs buckled. He finally realized this wasn't just a failure. It was a trap. "No," he hissed. He turned, trying to flee through the front door still open behind him, but it was too late. The two agents moved with speed, grabbing him firmly by both arms and shoving him hard against the foyer wall. "Let me go! Let me go! Catherine, what are you doing to me?" Michael screamed, struggling like a trapped animal. "Michael," Agent Miller said in a deep voice, "you are under arrest for premeditated fraud, document forgery, misappropriation of assets, money laundering, and abandonment with risk to your wife's life." An officer pulled out handcuffs. The metallic click as they closed around Michael's wrists sounded incredibly loud in the room. Michael went limp in the agent's hands. He was utterly defeated. Mr. Sullivan stepped forward, holding a thick envelope of documents. He stopped right in front of Michael. "This," Mr. Sullivan said in a clipped voice, "is the divorce petition Miss Catherine filed this morning. This is the official notice of nullification for all the forged powers of attorney you created, and these are the multiple criminal complaints filed by our firm." Mr. Sullivan then pulled out one more sheet. "And this is the breakdown of the claim for damages, for every dollar you spent in Nice, including every handbag, every shoe, every piece of jewelry you bought for your mistress. We will seize everything. You will not only go to prison, Michael, you will leave it in absolute destitution." Catherine, who had quietly watched the entire arrest from the living room, slowly approached him. She stopped a few feet from Michael, who was now handcuffed and weakly kneeling. She looked into the eyes of the man she once loved, now filled with terror. "Oh, Jessica," she said, feigning surprise. "You still care about her?" Catherine smiled. The smile that now seemed so horrifying to Michael. "Of course I haven't forgotten about her." He might not have loved Jessica, but involving her meant adding a conspiracy charge that would lengthen his sentence. He was trying to save himself. "Michael," Agent Miller said in a deep voice, "you are under arrest for premeditated fraud, document forgery, misappropriation of assets, money laundering, and abandonment with risk to your wife's life." An officer pulled out handcuffs. The metallic click as they closed around Michael's wrists sounded incredibly loud in the room. Michael went limp in the agent's hands. He was utterly defeated. She pointed to the large living room window that faced the front yard. "Look out there. My second gift is out there. Look closely." Michael, still held firmly by the two agents, was forced to turn his head. Agent Miller gave a signal, and one of the agents shifted Michael's body slightly so he could see clearly through the living room window. The large window offered a very clear view of the street in front of the house. The taxi that had brought Michael and Jessica was still parked there. The engine was running, but Jessica was no longer sitting quietly inside. The rear passenger door was wide open. Jessica was being forcibly pulled from the taxi by two female police officers. Another patrol car that had been parked discreetly down the street the whole time now had its blue light spinning, bathing the street in a sinister glow. Jessica was completely hysterical. Unlike Michael, who had been paralyzed by shock, Jessica erupted in screams and sobs of terror. Her sunglasses had fallen off, revealing her puffy eyes under smeared makeup. "Let me go! I don't know anything! Let me go!" she shrieked. The taxi driver, his face pale, stood by his vehicle, seemingly explaining to another officer that he hadn't been paid for the ride yet. The moment Jessica was pulled from the taxi, her terrified eyes caught a shadow in the house window. She saw Michael, handcuffed inside the house, looking at her. That moment shattered any remaining loyalty or love she might have had. She realized she had been sacrificed. "Michael," her shrill voice cut through the afternoon silence. "You said the plan was safe. You said that woman couldn't come back. You set me up. This was all your idea. I don't want to go to jail. You're a con artist. You told me you loved me." Jessica's confession, full of rage and fear, confirmed her full involvement as an accomplice. She was not a victim. She was a co-conspirator. The screams were clearly heard all the way in the living room, and Agent Miller nodded with satisfaction. Another perfect audio recording. Seeing Jessica hysterically accusing him, pointing him out as the mastermind of the crime, was the second blow for Michael. He had lost his fortune, and now he had lost his only ally. He had no one left. His entire world, built on lies, came crashing down on him. He sagged in the agent's grip. His body trembled violently. He was now just a pathetic, defeated man. He closed his eyes. He couldn't bear the sight outside anymore. He couldn't bear Catherine's face anymore. He just wanted it all to end. But Catherine wasn't done yet. "She'll be tried with you, darling." Catherine's quiet voice cut through the air, forcing him to open his eyes. "She will testify about everything you did in Nice. She'll tell them how you laughed, imagining me as a beggar in Paris. You'll enjoy the fruits of your labor in separate cells." Michael shook his head. "Catherine, please, stop." "I've lost," he whispered. Tears of humiliating defeat finally streamed down his cheeks. "Lost?" Catherine stepped closer and stood right in front of Michael, now kneeling, handcuffed, and crying. There was no compassion left in her heart, only cold contempt. "You think this is the end? You think prison is your worst punishment?" Michael raised his head. His reddened eyes looked at Catherine in confusion. "What else? What could be worse than this? And my final gift," Catherine whispered, as if sharing a sweet secret. "You were so obsessed with stealing my money. You focused so much on my fortune that you forgot about your own problems. You forgot that your own business was on the verge of bankruptcy. You forgot about the debts you had all over town." Michael's face turned even paler, if that was possible. She was right. He had used the last of Catherine's money before the accounts were frozen, not just for the vacation, but to cover a mountain of business debts and maintain his facade as a successful businessman. "While I was flying back from Paris," Catherine continued, her voice sharp as an ice blade, "Mr. Sullivan was not only preparing this welcome party, he tasked his team of auditors to trace all of your finances. And they found something very interesting." Mr. Sullivan stepped forward as if on cue. "Our team discovered that Mr. Michael owed millions to dozens of small creditors and private lenders. He offered the remnants of his company's worthless stock as collateral. When you disappeared and couldn't be contacted, they all panicked," Mr. Sullivan said in a monotone voice. "What does that mean?" Michael asked, his voice trembling. Catherine smiled. Her last smile of that evening. The smile that would haunt Michael's nightmares for the rest of his life. "It means," Catherine said, "that my lawyer has spent the last 2 days buying up all of that debt. He paid off all your creditors, all your promissory notes, all your collateral, all your business failures." Catherine leaned in a little, looking straight into Michael's eyes. "They're mine now. I have become your owner." And they found something very interesting. He would spend the rest of his days paying back the woman he tried to destroy. The burden was too much. Michael's sanity could no longer take it. He didn't faint. He broke. An inhuman sound came from his throat. A long scream of terror, despair, and madness. He thrashed, not to escape, but in a fit of mental collapse. "No, no, Catherine, no." Agent Miller gave a signal. "Get him out of here." The agents dragged Michael's now half-insane body out of the house. The screams continued to echo down the street until they were finally muffled by the slam of a patrol car door. The house was finally quiet again. Catherine stood alone in the middle of her magnificent living room. She looked at her now cold cup of tea. She had won. 6 months passed, the seasons changed, and so did Catherine's life. The trial of Michael and Jessica made national headlines. The scandal of the husband who abandoned his wife abroad to steal her fortune was a delicious morsel for the press, but Mr. Sullivan, with his professionalism, managed to protect Catherine's privacy. The trial was relatively quick. The evidence was irrefutable. The audio and video recordings from the night she welcomed Michael home were the final nail in their coffin. In them, Michael clearly admitted his actions, from the abandonment at the airport to his intent to seize her assets. Michael received the maximum sentence. The combination of premeditated fraud, document forgery, money laundering, and the charge of attempted homicide by abandonment, with risk to life, that the prosecution brought, earned him 20 years in prison. He lost all appeals. His once handsome face now looked old and hollow in a prison uniform. He was declared completely bankrupt by the court. Jessica, in a desperate attempt to save herself, agreed to become a key witness. She laid out all the details of Michael's plan from the beginning, painting him as a cunning manipulator who had promised her a life of luxury. Her testimony earned her a reduced sentence, but she was still sentenced to 7 years in prison for complicity in the crime. For Catherine, the closing of the case was the end of a dark chapter. Her divorce was finalized even before the criminal sentence was handed down. She was now a woman with a new status, but she was no longer the same Catherine. The naive woman who saw the world through rose-colored glasses was gone. Michael's betrayal had burned her to ashes, but from those ashes, a new woman arose, still soft-spoken and demure in her elegant attire, but now with a core of steel. She no longer delegated her affairs to others. She now appeared weekly at Mr. Sullivan's office, not as a confused client, but as an intelligent partner. She studied every detail of her father's inherited assets. She learned about investments, real estate law, and wealth management. She sold the luxurious townhouse, which was a silent witness to the betrayal. The memories were too heavy. She bought a more modern and secure penthouse downtown. With the rest of the money from the house sale and part of her fortune, she started a foundation. She named it after her late father, a non-profit legal aid organization dedicated to helping American women who were victims of domestic fraud and financial violence, both at home and abroad. She transformed her wounds into a force to help others. One sunny morning, a year after the Paris incident, Catherine appeared at JFK Airport. She was alone, pushing her own cart, looking calm and serene. She no longer walked with hesitation. Her steps were firm and confident. She wore simple but elegant clothes. She paused for a moment in front of the departure screens. She scanned the list of cities around the world, and then her gaze settled on her destination. It was not Paris. It was not Nice. She had chosen a destination for herself, by herself. A flight to Istanbul, Turkey, a trip she had planned all on her own, just for her. She went to the business class check-in counter. She handed over her new passport, still pristine. The agent smiled kindly at her, and Catherine smiled back. Her smile was different. It was no longer the smile of a naive wife waiting for happiness to be given to her by another. It was the smile of a whole woman, a woman who had faced her demons and won, a woman who had reclaimed her own destiny. After checking in, she walked calmly towards the lounge. She passed through thousands of people coming and going. She no longer felt small or intimidated in the crowd. She was her own world. She sat by a large window, watching the planes take off. She opened her phone, not to wait for news from a husband, but to check one last email from her foundation. She was free, she was stronger, and she was ready to begin her new dawn.